Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session on Learn to Program with .NET and C#, the platform to build anything. So hopefully you've seen some of the earlier sessions already today, talking about how important it is to develop programming skills and how Microsoft is doing a lot of things to make it easier to start to program and to do more things to be able to learn. So here we're really going to be going through how you can learn .NET and C#. Want to point out that we've got the live chat going, so please post any questions there as we're going through this material. And Shane and Beth will be watching the chat and bringing questions to us as we are proceeding. We'll be happy to answer as much as we can and then point you to the resources to learn more. Again, this session is going to be recorded. Please don't record it, and please adhere to the code of conduct. Basically, be nice to each other. We've already seen this, so I won't read the entire thing because I'd rather take more of our time to go through the material. You've seen it in the announcements. And again, please adhere to our code of conduct. So I'm Bill Wagner. I'm a principal content developer, primarily for C# and .NET. So everything under the C# guide in docs.microsoft.com is probably something I wrote or maintain. With me today is Shane Boyer, who is a principal advocate for our cloud solutions, primarily working on the .NET platform. Also has been coding in C# and .NET for years and can help us walk through a lot of the things in our Learn modules and more. So we talk about .NET as your platform for building anything. And the reason we do that is because we have all these different workloads that we will talk about a lot in terms of working with .NET. You can build for the desktop, you can build for web, cloud, mobile, gaming, IoT, AI, all those things we can talk about. Any of those, you can take those .NET skills and build for that platform. So learning C# and learning .NET means that any of these ideas that you have, you can take those skills and move from place to place and continue to use those skills anywhere you want. And .NET is built of a number of different things. We've got our core libraries and our infrastructure and runtime components. Those are the languages, compilers. We'll be focusing on C# as a language. We've got our libraries, and then we've got the other packages on top of those libraries that make it easier to build for each of these workloads. We also have our tools that we're going to talk about a little bit. You'll see things when you look at our docs or our Learn modules about working with the .NET CLI. That's how you run from the command line. We've got Visual Studio Code, which is a very lightweight editor. It's platform independent, so you get the same experience on whatever box you're on. And it's free, it's open source, and it's very approachable for beginners. As you learn and become more advanced, you may find that Visual Studio for Mac or Visual Studio is a much more powerful IDE. Gives you a lot more capabilities. And as we work through different things, as you continue to learn, you'll probably start to look at those. What we're going to do today is we're going to really focus on things inside Learn, which are primarily working in the cloud in a sandbox we've created that looks more like Visual Studio Code, but it's a great way to experiment without even putting anything on your machine. So once again, it's this unified platform. It makes it easier for you to build on top of any of those frameworks, to build any of the applications that you want. The infrastructure makes it easy for you to move back and forth between those. What you see here a little bit is the brand names or the library names that you see for each of those workloads. If you're working on the desktop, you've got WPF or Windows Forms, UWP. If you're in the web, you're going to see ASP.NET. ASP.NET Core is your primary areas that you're going to search for or find more information on. In the cloud, things are tailored to run in Azure. We have rich libraries to access all of the Azure services through very natural .NET APIs. Mobile, you're going to see the Xamarin brand. Gaming, Unity libraries. IoT, we've got ARM32 and ARM64 support. And for AI, you're going to have ML.NET and .NET for Apache Spark. Both of those work well as well. We're also going to focus a little bit on 3 different languages that are the primary languages that you'll use for .NET. We're going to focus on C# today because it's simple, modern, object-oriented language. Its roots are in the C family. So what that means, if you've seen JavaScript or C, C++, Java, any of those languages, C# syntax will be familiar and familiar to you very quickly. It's also the most popular of the .NET languages, which means if you're first entering programming and first entering .NET, that's where you're going to find the richest support among the developer community. F# is a functional language. If you're interested in functional concepts, if you came from languages like Haskell or OCaml, some of those will be very, very popular for you. F# will be very easy to adapt for you to adapt to .NET. And finally, Visual Basic. Visual Basic is a very popular beginner's language. It's been around for many years working with these. And sorry, I had a quick interruption there. And VB is the approachable language, simple syntax. We can look a little bit more about the difference between .NET and C# in that the language is the programming tools that you use to work with, and .NET is the platform and the APIs upon which you build. So C# is the language itself, .NET libraries, framework, and Unity are the things that we use to build it. What we're going to focus on here is as we look at Microsoft Learn for .NET. So if we look at aka.ms/mslearn-.net, which will be in the links that has been in chat and the announcements, that's the best place to go and just find all the content that you can work with inside .NET. So let's look at what that experience is. That's where we're going to spend most of our time today. So I've just got the link there, aka.ms/mslearn.net. That's going to redirect into our .NET space for Microsoft Learn. And you can see we have collections at the top, followed by learning paths, followed by particular modules. So let's define what those means. A collection is just everything about a particular topic. So they're a little bit less directed. You can pick and choose about everything about C#, everything about building apps on .NET, and then different instructor level courses. Especially if you're new to programming, I'd really recommend looking at that second block where they talk about learning paths. Learning paths are more like a curriculum. It will be a series of modules, and with each one of those modules, you will learn a new skill or a new technique inside, along a journey to become better with, say, .NET or with C#. So if you're new, I would definitely look at where you're most interested on your learning paths. We're going to talk into working on your learning path for C#. And then finally, different modules are a single concept. So they're smaller than a learning path. Learning paths are built of modules. Collections are built of modules. And each one of these, if you notice, each module is between half an hour and an hour to go through the entire module. So what you're going to get from this is one concept, one idea that you can practice and work with. So let's start on this learning path for take your first steps with C#. So you walk into here, you can see we're going to talk about what are the different modules. So we'll talk about write your first C# code, store and retrieve data, look at string formatting, look at numeric operations, and so on. Each one builds on a concept that you probably have seen before in one of these earlier modules. So they're definitely tailored to help you get started. So let's look at just the beginning of one. Let's start with writing your first code in C#. So we dive in, we have some stuff to read. You can read later. It will give you some more idea about what the programming language is, what the experience is. The next, we look at our Hello World exercise. So here in your browser, we're going to have two different sections. You've got instructions and some ideas for a tutorial on the left side of the screen. As you work with these, what you'll see is this text may get longer as you keep working. And then on the right, you've got an online editor that you can work with. So on the first one here, let's take this console.writeline. If I type run, what's going to happen if I press this button is that code moves to the other side. It automatically runs the code for me. I can see the output down here below in the lower right. But as you keep going, the more you can explore and the more you want to work with ideas, is you can keep changing anything. So if I were to make this a lowercase c, and try to type run, you can see I have red squiggles under console. That's because the name doesn't exist. It's not a library name with that lowercase c. It has to be the uppercase C. So in this very first module, they're going to teach you a little bit about writing some code, adding some code, seeing errors, seeing how the compiler reports what an error is, how you would go ahead and fix it. You know, that's pretty much what our day is, writing code. You're going to just see too many different things going on, and when you make a mistake, the tools will often help guide you to the correct solution or what you may have done incorrectly. And as you work through these modules, you know, they will give you a time and a technique as to how far it might take and how much time it takes. And I'll definitely encourage you to work through these and not just, you know, copy and paste the code, because you know you can do that and then you can see what happens. But go ahead and type code in and try to work with what's there. And the editor does some nice things for you. You can see it brings in a drop down of here's anything that's in C# that you started to type. And now as you continue typing, you can even just select which one it is, save some keystrokes, but also get hints as to how you can add things to the code you have so far. So it's console. I want to write some text. So I might start with write or write line. So I could even try to say, hey, let's just write something here. I could write anything that I want, end it with a closing quote and a semicolon. And there we have it. It now writes that out. And the difference between write and write line is that write doesn't add a carriage return. So if I go here, how's everyone doing? And then run that, and you can see that those two messages are on the same line. So as you go through each one of these, you're going to keep working through different techniques, different ideas. They're going to give you the different concepts that they go over in each one of these modules. Then each one is going to end with a challenge where you'll have to try to write some code on your own. So it'll help you as you're working through and trying to learn to experiment, take your time, run through some of the exercises, and try to work through them yourself. And then when you get to the challenge, you should have already seen everything that you want to do to be able to run these, you know, to solve the challenge. And then after working with it for a while, you can come through and say, well, did you get what you wanted to do? And as they point out here, there are many ways to write each one of the challenges. This is only one way that's possible. And then you'll get a knowledge check at the very end where you can, you'll have questions that you can answer. And then you can just check your answers and get that hopefully good feeling that you did learn all the new concepts in this module. And as I want to point out, this one we kind of browse through very quickly. But if I go back to this, you may find that as we look at all the way through that particular module, where what we can find is you'll get to different spots where maybe you can continue on a different path or hit some of the more complicated modules. So let's look at one of the later ones that's still not too involved, so we don't have to load a whole lot of things we don't see. But once we get into working with numbers, so if you look at this, we can see a little bit of how different new numbers work, where we can do addition. We can start to get mixing types. So if we run this one, we learn a little bit more about how C# mixes types together. If you notice, as we write some of this code in here, we're mixing things of a string, which is the first name, an integer, which is how many widgets someone's sold, and then we're putting those together into an output that's all a string. So we can write different code that converts the different types, as well as just working with the different numbers that we have. And again, as we go further down, we'll start to add more complicated expressions. We may find that, the next day, you may sell another 12 widgets. We say something like widgets plus equals 12. And then we'll add 12 to that number. If we run it again, we find that now we sold 19 widgets. We keep working with different bits of code to continue to add to that concept. So now we started to work with integers. Find as we work through here, we now get different kinds of math operations that you're familiar with. One thing that in C# happens that languages such as JavaScript are different in that in C#, when you say that something is an integer, it's always going to be a whole number. So now if I say widget sold equals widget sold divided by 2, with it when it was 19, and now when we divide it by 2, I may need to reload that. It shouldn't take that long to run. But again, as we pop that back up, get a fresh window. Not sure why that one is taking so long to run. I may have lost my container at this point. But what you would see there is 19 divided by 2 as an integer is 9. It is the largest whole number that is less than the actual answer, which would be 9.5. So we continue to work and you continue to add new concepts that you'll keep adding on to your knowledge. And here, again, as you start to work more and more with numbers, what you will find is you end up with floating point numbers in addition to integer numbers, and you can add with those as well. And you'll begin to see how you can use different kinds of numbers for different types of manipulation. So as we go back, we can add yet another module, and you'll see that as we keep working with these, you will end up, you can continue to add onto your skills with all the different kinds of areas that you can work with. You start to learn how, we talked about at the beginning, how .NET has a rich area of class libraries that you can work with. So as we go back into our take your first steps with C# learning path, what you can find is when you call methods from the .NET library, you'll start to learn how so much of the different things that you work with are calling methods, leveraging things that other developers have built for you in .NET. So again, there's a little bit more reading here. And as you've seen, you've already seen some of these. As I talk about here, you've seen console.writeLine. That's calling the writeLine method on the console class. We have another class in the library that's called random that generates random numbers. So we can then do simulations like working with rolling the dice. The first output, as you can see, is 5. Run it again. We now get a 3. And this code, hopefully, as you start to learn and start to see how to read code a little bit more, you start to learn the ideas of what is a class name or a type name. Random sounds like it is a type that is going to help you generate random information, random numbers. And then when you see this method here that says next, okay, that's going to give me the next random number. Because it's dice, you can probably make a pretty good idea that 1 and 7, it's going to be a number that is 1 or greater, but less than 7. So it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. So no matter how many times you keep pressing run here, you're going to see a number that is between 1 and 6. So you can continue to explore. You can even start to say, maybe I might want to just try to experiment on my own. Maybe I've learned some other things in another language, and another language has something like a loop here, and I can start to say, I've got a counter started at 0 and say, as long as it's less than 10, and then I'm going to add to it, and I want to execute this code. Nice and an indent here, and now maybe I can do a bunch of dice rolls. There we go. So you can continue to just keep experimenting on your own all the way through this, and continue to work through and continue to add ideas, add concepts, add more things that you can do and you can learn in C#. So you continue to work through the modules, work through the learning paths. With each one, you'll get that challenge toward the end and a knowledge check to check and see where you're at and see the different ways that you can continue to grow and gain more confidence and start to build the app that you want to build with the workload that you want to choose. Get the .NET SDK and get a lot more experience and then start to grow as a developer. So then I want to point out to a lot of different resources that we have. Learn is one way to learn, and that was where we spent a lot of our time here. The first two links on this slide are a series of videos that describe what is C#, what are the basics of C#. So if you're totally new to the language and you like hearing and getting the explanations, these are a nice, really good series of short 5 to 10 minute videos that will give you a great introduction to what is C#, what are the different things you can do with it. The .NET 101 videos are similar, but they talk about the .NET ecosystem. Remember, as we started earlier, we made that distinction between the language, C#, which is the code that you're writing and how you're building things, and that .NET ecosystem, which has all the libraries you work with, all the workloads, everything that helps you build a web app super fast, everything that helps you build something in Azure Functions, or your IoT solution, or your game. All those are libraries that you can work with. We talked about that first steps with C#. We went through a very brief overview of a few of the modules. Certainly not enough to think that you have finished all of them and learned all the concepts in them. But what you have is, at least you have an idea of what the learn environment looks like, how you can work in that environment. Notice I didn't have to install anything. I had the sandbox right there for me to experiment with. And probably one of the most important things to learn with there is even when something goes wrong or you wrote code that's going to do something really terrible, as you're learning, you're in a sandbox. It's just going to time out after a while and say, this program didn't complete, might give you some hints as to what may have happened. And then you can go on and fix it and continue learning. There's really no risk there. You can't really hurt the environment. The other learning path that's going to be really useful is the build applications with .NET. That's going to teach you a little bit more about a lot of the workloads. It's going to give you an overview of some of the different things that you can build, give you more of a flavor of the libraries that will help you build those things quick. One of the things you'll find as you really dive into .NET and start to learn more about the platform is it is rich and powerful. You may look at a really big problem, and then you'll see, there's already a library that solves most of it. I only have to add the things I want for what I'm trying to build. And that will really help accelerate your development, accelerate how quickly you learn and build things, and you're productive with .NET. Docs, we have our Get Started with C# content. That will give you a little bit more if you prefer reading to, say, the series that's on video. This will give you a great way to read all that content of what does C# provide. Same thing with Let's Learn.net. This is going to be a new video series that's starting later this week, which is going to start walking through different workloads and different things that you might want to build. So it's a little bit less structured than Learn, but you're going to get a lot of ideas of what kind of things can you build that are going to be awesome for you. If you're interested in Twitch and live streaming, Jeff Fritz has his Twitch channel where twice a week he's building an application. So you can see someone who's experienced with .NET, but like all of us, still learning, and he's adding features to an app, and people are asking him questions about where he's finding his ideas, where he's finding the resources or different libraries to use, or how he's building out algorithms. Those help a great deal. And then the Visual Studio Twitch stream also has regular streaming with tips and tricks in Visual Studio. As you continue your learning, you're eventually going to get Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio, and that is going to get you more information on how the IDE works and help you get things running and help you be more productive. And finally, follow .NET on Twitter for announcements. Because one of the things that's coming soon that we're working on is something that's going to be called the .NET Coding Pack. It is an automated development setup environment. So basically, you're going to get this pack, and it's going to install everything you need to be productive in Visual Studio Code for .NET. There's going to be a pre-release that's going to happen this week at Ignite. So if you're really interested, you can go ahead and get started on it. It's a pre-release, so I didn't demo it tonight because this is probably going to change a little bit how it's going to work. But that would be one of the exciting things that you can work with. And now from there, let's take any questions that we have and dive in and see what else we can work with.
Awesome, Bill. I appreciate the quick run through there of everything. There is one question that comes up, and really we'll cover probably one or two questions in there. Somebody asked, what do I want to learn? What should I learn first, .NET or C#? And I think that's a good opportunity for you to describe kind of what's the difference between C# and .NET and how they related.
Yeah, I think the answer is you're going to learn both as you go along. In that, like if I even take this 6-line snippet here that does the random dice roll. Random is a class in .NET. So that's something you didn't have to write. You didn't have to write a random number generator from scratch. The console is a class in .NET. So you didn't have to do character output to the screen and write all the low-level bits to do that. That's a class in .NET. The for loop, that's part of C#. That's a language feature. Integer is a built-in type in C#. So that's also a language feature. So you're going to see both as you go along. So I think what you're really going to do is you're going to kind of slide back and forth, learning things in C# so that you can write your own code, learning more about the libraries so that you're leveraging them and doing more things and building what you want to build. So you're going to kind of go back and forth a lot. The introductory C# material is going to cover a fair amount of .NET, especially the core classes. And the introductory .NET material is going to cover the language because that's the way you use it. So it's a distinction that we talk about, but it's really going to be, you're going to end up learning both, I think, as you keep progressing all the way along.
Yeah, and I think that one of the other things too that we'll mention is just kind of related to that is that .NET is the ecosystem of all things that we can write to, where C# is one of the languages that we support within the .NET ecosystem. Obviously, as Bill pointed out earlier, there's VB and also F#. And the various tools that were mentioned, Visual Studio, VS Code, Visual Studio for Mac, and actually the .NET CLI will all support all of those things as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Somebody wants to know a little bit more about the coding pack. I think they're just kind of let's pay attention to more of Ignite coming out. We'll run through some of that. So just kind of look for that in your session.
And yeah, and I would also definitely watch the .NET Twitter account. That is where more of that will be announced as well.
And one last question here that I'm seeing asked a couple of times is the relationship of C# and PowerShell, or C# and a shell. What are your suggestions, or what's your feedback around picking a shell, or should I learn C# and PowerShell together?
Wow, that's a good one. I think it really depends on your platform and to some degree on your experience. When I'm on Windows, I use PowerShell, and I will write the occasional commandlet in C#. When I'm on a Mac, I used to use Unix when I was much younger, and I still feel reasonably comfortable in Bash or Z Shell, and I write shell scripts using that. So I think both are really good options. I think it depends on what you're most comfortable with and which one you like.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it. Wherever you want to go, we do what we can within the framework and the languages to make you happy. If it's Mac, Linux, Windows, there's a tool for you that we either build and or support there. So that's about our time. Bill, if you've got any final things, we said follow @.net on Twitter, and feel free to ask questions there, or ask Bill or myself. We'd be happy to help you out.
Fantastic. Yes. Thank you very much. And thank you for your time. And we'll keep seeing more stuff on Learn and Docs to help you grow as much as you want.
Perfect.